Hi, it's Evelyn. It's May 11th and it's time for an updated garden tour. So the last time I took you for the garden tour a month ago, not much had happened in the garden because we had an exceptionally cold March and April, broke a couple of records on a few days for cold daytime temperatures. Now we're doing the opposite. We're actually entering a heat wave and we're going to break some records on how hot it's going to be for some individual days coming up. I think Sunday, right now the forecast is for 31 or 32 degrees Celsius, which is just like ridiculously warm for this time of year. We do get those temperatures, but not at this time of year. So anyway, let's get on with the tour. We're going to start the tour with what in the last few months' tours was a very, very dark spot here, which is the back of our garage, the unused dark side of our house. And as you can see, I've got a lot more rocks in here for the pathway for where a lot of water runs down when it's raining. But I've been doing some work here. So wherever foxgloves were growing where they're not supposed to grow, I've dug them all up and I put them up against the house because they grow really well in shade. You can see those ones are starting to grow. In front of them, I have a run of pots of astilbe that I don't exactly know where I'm going to plant them yet. Astilbe grows prolifically on my property. There's a few pots of just regular daisies here. Not sure if I'm keeping those or not. Might just give those away to somebody. And at the corner of the house where the downspout is some ferns that I can't get rid of because the roots are tangled all the way around the downspout piping. If I flip around to the other side, I still haven't done anything here, except I've extended the line of bricks up the side of the house here. I'm just going to show you what I have down here, just because it might be interesting to you. Here's the steps that go up to our deck, so those are our back steps. But what I have back here in the sort of no man's land is my little potting station. So anytime I want to transplant anything in a pot or whatever, I do it here. Underneath the table I have all my 1 gallon and 2 gallon pots. Top of the table I have bigger pots. Lots more ferns. This flower that's growing, that's hanging over the fence from the neighbors, does any of you know what it is? I'd really love to know what it is, so I'll just do a little close-up of that. It's really, really pretty, but I have no idea what the name of it is. There. It's got quite a spiky and breakable stem. The stem is brittle, even though it's blooming quite nicely. But yeah, I love it. It's pretty. Whatever comes through my side of the fence, I do use in bouquet and flower arrangements once I have something to start making arrangements. And same thing here, all these rhodos that come over the fence, I have to trim them back anyway because otherwise they'll start hitting the house in about 1 year. So I trim them back when they're blooming and I use all the rhododendrons in bouquets as well. Pick up my garden plan again. Just thought my little potting station here might interest you a bit. So all down here where I have not done any weeding, in this section where the bricks are, this will all be sunflowers. And the next succession of sunflowers will start at the end of this. And the reason I don't do any weeding is because right now weeds do a very important thing of keeping the soil healthy with their roots because of all the micro and macrobiology that the root habitat creates. So till I use it, that is going to be important, those weeds. There's Esri. So back to this path here. This bed here. So this is where I've got the Nigella growing. As you can see, it still hasn't done much, but it is actually starting to grow. So we'll see what happens with that. Same as the stalk. It hasn't done much, but at least it's starting to grow. The deciduous peonies, the 6 of them, clearly have put on quite a bit of growth. And the sweet peas, I put these little cheap little wire fences now down along the bottom of the stakes because the sweet peas, until they're strong enough or big enough to grab onto the poles, they can wrap their way around these little inexpensive fences that I have running along here. And since they're now starting to grow, clearly this one's grown quite a bit since it was first planted. They're going to start growing like crazy. So that gives them a little bit of support while they get started there. You can see you've got lots of bluebills growing there right up against the fence, and a lot of weeds. But again, I'm leaving the weeds because a lot of the water runs down this way when it rains a lot, and the weeds are stopping the soil from eroding and going down that way and dropping down into the neighbor's property. Because if I go to the fence, for instance, here and look over it, whoops, you can see there's quite a drop off here. Well, I don't know if you can see it, but there's quite a drop off there. Anyway, the second bed, let me just pick up my plan here. I've got the Ito peonies are really growing like crazy, and they're starting to bud up. And I finally got the names of each one. So this particular Ito peony here, that is Lollipop. The one at the front of this bed, still a little bit smaller. That one's called Strawberry Cream Brulee. My lettuce plants are really starting to grow. Late, a little late, not too late, but they're definitely starting to grow. There's the red ones. Forget the name of them, I'll put it up on the screen. And then these ones that are green with a little bit of red in them. Same thing, I'll put the name on the screen. These are, I believe, my butter lettuce, or maybe romaine. I did actually get some romaine. Oh no, here's a romaine. This is one of my romaines here that came from 3-year-old pelleted seeds, amazingly. And then there's leaf lettuce over here. It's probably grown the most. Lots of little weeds in between. Oh, here's one thing that's really interesting. If I swing back over to my Nigella, I have a little lettuce plant that's self-seeded in there. That's kind of fun. My lavenders along this side of the path, which you couldn't even see before, that I stuck in as just little shoots to root over the winter, they're clearly starting to grow. And the ones at the front of this first bed are also clearly starting to grow. So they'll soon be taking off as well. Now in the lettuce bed, I'm going to be putting 3 tomatoes later on today or tomorrow before we get into the ridiculously hot temperatures. Today is the last day where it's hot, but not ridiculously hot, so I think I will definitely get them planted today because it'll be better for the roots to be in the soil. I have a Shasta daisy that's just popped up here on its own. I'm finally starting to get my anemones blooming here that I never dug up in the fall because I was done with anemones. You can see there's a few there. These ones over here are starting to bloom. And they are forcing me to change. Ooh, look, here's a dark one coming up. They're forcing me to change my mind on anemones because of how early they're blooming compared to everything else in my garden. If I can get easily early blooms like that, anemones are back in the game for next year, and I'll probably be buying some more and increasing their stock. As you know, I bought the blue ones this spring, and I've still been getting the odd blue one even though I planted them about a month ago. So they're doing really well. So yeah, anemones are probably back on the agenda for next year. Probably replacing the Nigella and the stock, unless I change my mind when they start blooming and I like them. So these tulips that I was going to have for sale, they never even started to bloom before they started dying back. That's how weird our weather's being. And what I've done is I've put a row of them here. Clearly these ones did bloom, and I always break off the heads. And I'll just be leaving them here for the summer, and they'll be adding just a teeny little bit of shade to the anemones. I'll do another row on the other side of what's left over. And then on this middle third bed, same thing on both sides. Because that little bit of shade that they offer roots is really, really good, and that way they can die back naturally. And then they'll be good to go for next year again, all the ones that I don't sell. So the middle bed, which is my Ranunculus bed, I'll be planting 2 tomatoes later on today. This Ito peony, you know, and they all are getting buds on them now. This Ito peony is called, let me just flip my garden plan around so I can read it. It's called Julia Rose. See all the Ito peony, or the ranunculus in here are really starting to grow. Nothing really grew much until recently because of how cold it's been. My Bartzella, you can see I've got the yellow one there, and it's Bartzella, which is right above Julia Rose. It's getting really, really big. Buds on it as well. There's another one. There's another one. I mean, they're all over it. The ranunculus, clearly not ready to bloom yet, but definitely, finally growing like crazy. I come across to the second bed, which is the snapdragons. I have in front of that some of my extra dahlias that I'll be selling. Doing well. They of course love the hot weather. These pots need watering 2-3 times a day because see how it's still morning, and they've been watered once, and the dryness goes down at least an inch, and the soil is really, really warm. So this bed has the snapdragons. They're still pretty small, but they're starting to grow. Here's another self-seeded lettuce plant right there beside a self-seeded garlic. This Ito peony, you can see there's a bud there. There's a bud there. There's a bud there, and so forth and so on. That one's called front, so that's morning lilac. And the back one in this bed is called Canary Brilliance, which is this one over here. I love the way the leaves do on the Ito peonies. They have this beautiful striation in some of them. That's just quite pretty. Got some bluebells that are just popping up for no reason. Some garlics over here that are popping up for no reason. Foxglove, Swiss chard, all the Swiss chard here. Now the Swiss chard that's this big, that's last year's. Swiss chard is a biennial. So as soon as I'm going to also harvest all the leaves, because as soon as the really hot weather hits, they're going to start growing their flower stalks. I leave 1 or 2 so that they can self-seed everywhere. I'll see if I can show you any seeds that have sprouted. This is usually a really, yeah, so you can see there's already seeds from last year's flowers starting to come up right there. I get so much Swiss chard, and the thing is, Swiss chard is really, really healthy for the dogs. There's a few more. So we like to grow a lot of it and put it in the dog food that we make. We make dog, well, I say we, but Bruce actually does. We make the dog food so that it's 50% homemade and 50% store-bought. Mix it up together. So in the front of this first bed, here's the rest of the dinner plates that I have left over. This is just these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 by 20 flats is what's left for the roadside flower wagon and for the farmer's market that will be coming soon. So this first bed of the 5 that are 4 by 8 that go across here, the garlics are growing really, really nicely. That's what these are. I've got some, it looks like I've got some flowering alliums coming up here. I must have dumped some soil for a pot that didn't do anything last year, because I've also got some daffodils. Here are my bachelor buttons. They're the first of the seeds that I started this year that's really taking off in growth, but they got a ways to go before their stems are long enough. So in this bed, this first Ito peony is Pastel Splendor, and the back one is Pink Double Dandy. So that's this bed. It's, of course, you can see that it's got the garlics lining the other side of it as well. And in the front of this bed, I'm going to be planting zucchini later on today. And then I'll have to move this because I don't want it in shade. Well, maybe I'll leave it in shade for the first few days until it establishes itself. Now in this first strawberry bed, of course, all the crocuses are finished. But look at all the strawberry flowers. So these are all June bearers. So they're right on schedule to start getting their flowers. Same as the other bed over there. On the bed that's edging, my candy tuft is in full bloom. That's really pretty. spilling over the edge of this to create a nice little splash of white stop. I've got 3 pots with more astilbe in it over here. Actually 2 pots with astilbe in it over here, just where the drop off is. And then I've got one of my raspberries with a foxglove popping out of it, and there's another little foxglove. There's another raspberry pot in here. It's not doing too much. The big raspberry pot, the old faithful that I've had in this pot for about 15 years. It's starting to get flowers on it, or flower buds on it. And then of course I've got my 3 blueberries back here. I've spaced them out because they're also starting to get flowers on them. And these blueberries are going to go get covered in 4-foot cages to keep the birds out of the blueberries and the dogs, because the dogs won't clean them all off. They bloom at different times, so this is clearly going to be the first one to bloom. I've got 2 garbage cans of soil here that is left over from when I composted in the concrete beds which line the house side of the driveway there. And I keep them here with the lids off now because it's hot, and they're going to get watered at the same time as the garden. If it's raining, the lids, which are just tucked in back there, they'll go on top of the garbage can so that there doesn't get too much water in there. But they do get watered at the same time as the garden so that the soil doesn't get anaerobic. So as you can see along here, along the edge of the bed, I have a lavender there. Nice big astilbe. It's starting to get some flower buds on it. I've got some tulips that are finished. I got some purple alliums here. I forget the name of them. They came from mix. I don't actually know the name of them. They'll be popping up here. Got another lavender here. Got some sedum. It's starting to tip its head, which means it's getting ready to bloom. Lots of sedum here. That might get replaced with something more interesting at some point. I've got my cosmos now all planted in here. You can see there, and they actually travel around to the other side of this astilbe. Here's another astilbe. Here's a little tiny, more wild style of tulip. The last of the tulips in the garden. More cosmos over here because I started them and wrapped them all the way around here. So if we go down here, crocus foliage there, lots of crocus foliage there. And although I said I wasn't going to grow globe thistle anymore, that's what this is. It's just popping up in the path here, and I'll leave it there. So again, lots of, you can see that where it's shadier down there, less strawberry flowers, and this section is really, really full. That will get them, but it'll kind of stagger the harvest a bit. So we're going to come down to the back of the bed. You can see more daffodils that are completely finished. I'm just going to pluck the tops of their head off, same as that tulip. My poor rosemary, which didn't make it very well through the winter, a lot of it died back. That's there. It's getting taken over by this giant astilbe. More alliums. Not sure what that is. I planted it, but I can't remember. Here's another foxglove. We have this purple clover, really big-headed clover. I let it grow for the health of the soil. More astilbe. Back here, no, there's nothing back there. Here's another foxglove. It looks like it's got a bit of rust or something on it. Another astilbe, another big purple clover. Not sure if I planted this or not. Is there anything at the base of it? If I did, I can't remember what it is. It might be a weed. I'll find out soon enough. This is side again here, and is starting to wrap around there a bit. And what's really interesting is if you look on the inside of the garage, oh, try to get my shadow out of here. Hang on. So here's the height of the outside mint, And there's the height of the inside mint, which is growing through the crack inside the garage there. It's, you know, so if this is the outside, that's the height. It's clearly double in height, which is kind of cool. Never step on it, always step in front of it and over it. So here is sunflowers. Clearly I need to water these, they're dried out. They had tops on them, but they keep blowing off. My tomatoes that are going to get planted out later on today. My zucchini. I got one basil plant here. And then my cucumbers as well that are going to get planted out today. You can see just it's just getting, I mean, they've been watered this morning and it's still morning and they're already dry. Got to do something with my African marigolds, same thing, completely dried out. So I got to deal with those. And this is the next succession of sunflowers to get planted. The ones here, they were started last week on late Friday afternoon. Hopefully they'll do okay because they're so dried out. I mean, there's some, you can see there's one coming up with a seed pod still on it. There's one. So, but some of the seeds might have dried out a bit too much, but you know, they dry out in the wild, so I don't necessarily buy into this that they can't dry out, because that's what happens when they just naturally land on the ground. Anyway, so that's that. We're now going to go up the driveway, and as you can see, this concrete bed is also all full of sunflowers. They're this big right now. All this stuff that you see here, that's borage. I'll let that stay as an underplanting to the sunflowers. I always have borage growing throughout here, so it just pops up like crazy everywhere. And then the shade garden, you can see the hostas are starting to grow. Boy, look at that, there's even lemon balm there. Hostas are definitely starting to grow. That one. See what I mean in my last video, that the dogs like to go in here for the shade? It's a nice cool spot. Look how nice that hosta looks. And then come on the driveway, there's this one. This one looks pretty bunged up by the dogs. Ferns are growing on the other side of the driveway. We have more sunflowers, bigger than the ones before because they were planted. So the ones at the side of the garage, that was the last planting. This first bed here was the planting before that. This bed here was the planting before that. And then this bed here was the first planting. And they're definitely starting to grow in size. And then back to the hostas over here in the shade garden. The columbines that are popping up are also starting to bloom. There's a little coral bells or heuchera down there with its beautiful purple leaves. These leaves are really good in small arrangements. My giant Solomon seal is blooming. Look at that, isn't that pretty? It's good in flower arrangements, but not on hot days, unfortunately. It, as you can see, droops when it's hot. So it needs a good, cool, shady day for it to do well in a vase. The camellia is starting to put on new growth, so it's got this beautiful little brown leaves here. It was still blooming, but now it's too hot for it. You know, it's done. It's unhappy. More hostas that it looks like my dogs were nibbling at. More giant Solomon seal there. I love giant Solomon seal in arrangements. This one seems to not be as heat fatigued because it's not as drooping down. Just love the way these look with their graceful little arching flowers and bells. I have an astilbe in here. I have my primroses here. They look like they're kind of starting to finish in the heat. This is a beautiful hosta. Might be able to use some of those leaves in the arrangement when it's not too hot. More primroses, ferns, columbines getting ready to open, hostas, primroses, columbines, hostas. another Astilbe. Here's a columbine that is opening. Isn't that pretty? And here's a dog who put her ball on the outside of the driveway fence and can't get it. I can roll over on that side. Come on, get your ball out. There. Okay, so the dahlias, there we go. The dahlias are looking great. They of course love the heat, so they're doing fantastic. I'm slowly switching out the milk jugs that I had for these bottomless yogurt containers that are sliced down one side so that you can fan it on there because of how hot it's going to get. The milk jugs that were bottomless milk jugs that were on top of them are going to be just too hot in there. That microclimate's just going to be way too hot. So the dahlias all look great. See, I still have to switch that one. I have switched that one. These poor tulips, they were just starting to open up, and because of the heat, they're like dying before they've even bloomed. So those are a loss for this year as far as putting them up on the road, but that's okay. They'll be good for next year. I'm just gonna, oh look, this rhododendron's starting to open. So as you can see down there, there's the steps that go up to our deck. So that's near where we started the video. And these are the rhodos that I was pointing out that sort of take over our pathway here to the house. So I prune them as I prune them when they're in flowers so I can use the flowers, but you can see how many flowers are really starting to bloom on there. So that's great. See if I can get a closer look, because this is a red rhodo that everybody really, really loves. Maybe I'll take a picture and pop it on the screen. And then and then it's the same thing here. This draping flower, whatever it is, it's not in bloom yet, so I don't know what it is either, because it's on the other side of the fence over there. I love using it in arrangements, so I prune it back when it's in flower. If you can recognize it just from its bud form, let me know what it is. I have no idea. It's really, really pretty. It's just beautiful. And then this is hydrangea, lace cap hydrangea, and it's really starting to put on growth. So same thing, I use the flowers when I prune it, and I need to, because it'll hang right over into here and bury out my dahlias. So I prune it and use the flowers sort of as my payment for pruning. So what am I trying to say here? The sweet peas that are in the back here, they're growing. Here's bluebells. I'm just going to go where it's easier to show you how they're growing, where I don't have anything here. Step onto my steps here, and you can see the sweet peas are all starting to grow along here as well. And that's a good way to show you how tall they are. I mean, so that's a good foot tall now, which is excellent. All of this is snowberry that has shoots that come from, again, the other side of the fence, but it's got these really beautiful little leaves on it. So they're great for bouquets as well. So I don't mind the shoots coming through here, because I use them all in bouquets. So that's kind of exciting to have all that there. More bluebells here. A couple of little pansies that popped up on their own. There's one of the dahlias that I planted that's going to get tied to that post. I think that's the Cafe au lait rose. And look, I mean, even the shoots here, they just pop up everywhere, but so useful. And it looks like it's a snowberry. It looks like it's starting to get its blossom points on it as well, at least where it's in the sun. So that's kind of fun. These daffodils, it's Original Poets. They're just starting to open up because they're a late daffodil, and now we're getting this really hot heat wave, so I don't know how that's going to affect them at all. More foxgloves that just pop themselves up everywhere. I'll show you how they pop themselves up everywhere. If I go into this big giant pot here. Look, this is a pocket in the pot. Just a little pocket in the pot, and it's got 3 foxgloves growing out of it. I'll show you the size of the pots. That's the size of the pot, or the little side pockets, and it had 3 foxgloves growing out of it. I got pansies that self-seeded in this one, and what I do is I just put a pot in the top of it, as you can see, and then I change it out. Like when these die back, I'll put something else in there. Another foxglove. All this little stuff here, more poppy seeds that I put here. Again, too many. I thought the birds would do a better job of cleaning out a lot of the seeds, so I clearly put too many of the seeds there. These will be the pink peony ones. And the red peony ones I put back here with the sweet peas, and you can see how it's like a mat of red poppies growing along here. Look like my chives are starting to bloom. That's a pot of chives. So that's the front yard. By the way, I love this giant pot here because it's tall enough to be seen from the road. Because of its height, it comes above that concrete barrier. See how Ezra goes up to the fence and puts her ball on the other side? She plays with herself that way. I've got the dahlias up at the roadside wagon, but we've removed the risers with the 3 steps on it from this side. Because now that it's getting really hot, we're going to have to start turning the wagon to stop it, to stop the afternoon and evening sun from going directly into the wagon and cooking everything that's in there. And the 3 pots along here, my sweet marjoram, this lavender are looking fantastic. This lavender is looking a little unhappy. I'm going to plant something around the base of it so that you only see the top of it. That's partly the problem with the dogs when they were younger, because they would climb into here all the time. Oh look, I got a little columbine blooming here. There's another sweet marjoram. More columbines. And over on here, these were the ones that grow under the table. They're really blooming nicely now. Look how pretty that is. So they're half blooming outside this little table, half blooming inside this little table. And this is just a pot of weeds that I dug up. A couple of dandelions getting ready to bloom. Get those out of there. I let the weeds die, and then I use them as compost. So that's much of the garden tour. I hope you enjoyed the tour of my garden this May. It's very hot outside for me. It's not even that hot outside, but our weather's been so cold that I'm not quite conditioned to it yet. Next week is going to be about getting ready for the farmer's market, because farmer's market season is coming. And when the farmer's market finished last year in September, I packed everything away and haven't looked at it since. So I need to be able to get everything out, do a mock setup, and see what it is I'm going to be taking to the farmer's market. Maybe I'll drop a few things, maybe I'll add a few things. Basically just see what I got. And yeah, we'll go from there, and I'll take you along for the setting up the mock stand for the farmer's market as I get ready for the season. Until next week, bye.